Welcome back to the channel. Today, we will uncover the entire shocking truth behind the secret meeting at Highgrove Estate, a family reunion covered up by a sophisticated and costly security operation unprecedented in history. As we can all see, Harry and Meghan are always screaming on American media to demand privacy, constantly claiming that Britain is too dangerous a place for their safety. However, the ridiculous thing is that Meghan and her two children slipped across the border spectacularly, sneaking right into the private estate of the king amidst a massive decoy convoy of 20 cars. A diversion operation so perfect that no notorious paparazzi knew about it. Not a single photo was leaked. Not a single official statement was released. But that terrifying silence only lasted exactly 3 days. Right after that, Harry sat proudly on a hit podcast program, smiling smugly, and continued to loudly call himself the Prince of England, the Duke of Sussex, as if no conflict had ever happened. What the hell is really going on behind those closed doors? Whether King Charles, because he was too weak before the desire to see his grandchildren, accepted to compromise, or he just set up a perfect media trap, stripping away the only remaining weapon of the Sussexes, which is playing the victim. This Game of Thrones has long had no place for simple family affection. It is truly a life-and-death battle to protect million-dollar brand empires. Before we dive into the darkest secrets of this historic meeting, do you think King Charles was masterful or made a mistake? Please comment Key 1 if you think this is an excellent move by the king, or Key 2 if you think he yielded too much, so we can discuss it together. And to understand why this meeting is a life-and-death move, we must go back in time to the exact day that 20 black cars quietly entered Highgrove. Let us be honest with each other, my friends. For the past 6 grueling years, we have been fed an unchanging chorus from Montecito: Britain is too dangerous. Britain, the homeland of Harry, by some miracle in their story, has become a battlefield full of lurking threats, where every step of the Sussex couple is targeted. Harry has spent countless months throwing millions of pounds into useless lawsuits against the Home Office, stubbornly insisting on getting back security protection using taxpayer money. He boldly declared to the whole world that he cannot and will never bring his beloved wife and his children Archie and Lilibet back to the land of fog without a heavily armed bodyguard escort 24/7. They have sold the American public an image of pitiful victims, always having to live in constant fear, ruthlessly hunted by the media and invisible extremists. But then, suddenly, reality slaps those tearful claims right in the face. Look at what actually just happened at Highgrove Estate. A super-luxury VIP movement operation, so secret that CIA or MI6 agents would probably have to take their hats off in admiration, was staged perfectly right under the noses of everyone. Meghan Markle, along with the 2 children Archie and Lilibet, those who are always touted as the most threatened targets, quietly took off from an anonymous location in Europe. They landed on British soil, sliding through separate aisles at the airport like ghosts, leaving absolutely no trace on the radar of profit-hungry news hunters. And the climax of this unimaginable magic show was when they became invisible and successfully blended into an ongoing event at Highgrove. Try to imagine the scale of this operation. Not 1, not 2, but a massive decoy formation of up to 20 shiny black cars was deployed. 20 cars moving tactically, crisscrossing each other, completely obscuring the view, creating a perfect mobile maze to swallow the Sussex mother and children and bring them through the gates of the estate of King Charles in the smoothest way. No flashes went off, no deafening screams from paparazzi, not a single blurry photo leaked to the tabloids. Absolute privacy was established, entirely using resources and arrangements from within the system they always criticize. Do you see the bitter irony here? This silent break-in is the sledgehammer that completely smashes all the weak arguments of Harry in the security lawsuit against the British government. They used their own actual actions to prove a naked truth. They can absolutely be invisible and stay absolutely safe in the United Kingdom if they really, truly want to keep it a secret. The surrounding danger that they have been screaming about for so long turns out to be just a carefully staged play to maintain attention. If Britain were truly a dangerous black hole that strips away the safety of Meghan and her children, would a mother who constantly talks about protecting her children like her dare to risk flying them across continents, then slipping through security fences to enter Highgrove? Of course not. What just happened exposes a cruel truth that the multi-million-dollar legal battle of Harry was never really about physical safety. It is a battle of ego, of demanding the royal privileges they voluntarily gave up, and most importantly, the burning desire to be treated like top heads of state, supreme VIPs who must have siren-blaring cars clearing the way wherever they go. And this leads us to the most ridiculous paradox in the whole play named Privacy of the Sussexes. We are too familiar with this repeated script. When they need PR, when they need to polish their fading names, or when there is a lucrative deal with media giants, Meghan will always know how to roll down the window of the bulletproof car at the right time, flashing a radiant, flawless smile right in front of the lenses of the tipped-off paparazzi in Los Angeles or New York. They are willing to participate in car chases described as life-threatening in the middle of bustling Manhattan at a snail pace, just to ensure that their names definitely appear on the front page of every newspaper the next morning. They crave the camera lens. They survive on the attention of the public. Yet, miraculously, when they need to step into the shadows to negotiate life and death interests with King Charles, when they need absolute silence to carry out their personal calculations behind the cold stone walls of the royal family, suddenly they turn into the most invisible stealth spies in the world. There is no radiant smile through a lowered window, no accidental information leak from unnamed friends. This hypocrisy is so glaring that it blinds even their most loyal supporters. Privacy for the Sussex couple is clearly not a sacred fundamental right that needs to be protected. It is simply a switch that can be turned on and off at will, a PR tool deliberately used to manipulate the public and serve their own commercial interests. This secret stroll has exposed everything. They played this invisible card in the hope of gaining an unexpected upper hand in the meeting with the monarch. They successfully slipped through the gates of Highgrove perfectly, but what awaited them inside was not an unconditional welcoming embrace, but an extremely cold strategy from Buckingham Palace. When the giant oak doors of Highgrove Estate closed, separating the Sussex family from the outside world, a miniature geopolitical chess game, sophisticated, ruthless, and calculated down to the millimeter, officially began. To understand the genius in the response of Buckingham Palace, we must look deep into the extreme dilemma that King Charles was facing. On the one hand, he is the mighty king of a kingdom, the head of the Commonwealth, but in another more profoundly human corner, he is simply a grandfather battling illness, with a burning desire to see his flesh and blood. It has been 4 whole long years since the last time the king met Archie and Lilibet in person. 4 years of invisible voids, of cold video calls and vague promises. The Montecito PR team of the Sussex couple understands this fatal weakness perfectly well. They laid a perfect media trap, a win-win situation for themselves. Try to put yourself in the shoes of the palace to analyze this. If King Charles, due to anger and deep wounds from countless memoirs and smearing interviews on American television, decided to slam the doors of Highgrove, forbidding Meghan and Harry from bringing their grandchildren to visit, what would happen? Immediately, the familiar victim script would be activated. Harry and Meghan would again appear on a tens of millions of dollars Netflix documentary, tearing up telling about a cold-blooded, ruthless royal family, a heartless grandfather, refusing the innocent affection of 2 children just because of adult conflicts. The crown would bear an unwashed stain of inhumanity. But if the king opened the door to welcome them without an ironclad defense strategy, the palace would hand right to the mouth of the Sussexes what they are craving most right now: royal aura to polish their names. And this is the moment that the veteran advisory machine of Buckingham Palace proves the reason why the British royal family has existed and stood firm for centuries. They deployed a cold but absolutely brilliant diplomatic strategy named access, not acceptance. King Charles allowed the meeting to take place, fulfilling the desire of a grandfather, completely collapsing the royal rejection of family affection rhetoric of the Sussexes. But, and this is a destructive but for the entire commercial plan of Meghan Markle, he erected an invisible steel wall, absolutely without any loophole to exploit. The results of this historic reunion are encapsulated in numbers that haunt the media. 0 photos were released. 0 press releases were issued. There was not any public acknowledgement from the palace that this event ever existed. The steel wall of the king blocked all filming attempts, all recording plots, or any tricks to keep physical evidence of the meeting. Think about this through the lens of Hollywood. In America, currency is not just dollars. Currency is image, connection, proof that you still have exploitative value. A photo of King Charles smiling, holding Lilibet, or putting his arm around Archie in the Highgrove garden would be a priceless blank check for the Sussexes. That photo could be sold exclusively to prestigious magazines for millions of dollars. It could become the cover photo for the next memoir, or be formally framed as golden material for a new lucrative media project to renew their slowly depleting contracts. But Charles stripped away all of that most dangerous weapon. The absolute silence from the palace was a more devastating punishment than any public criticism. By not releasing a single photo or a line of statement, the king turned an event with the potential to shock the globe into a closed family visit, completely worthless in the media market. Meghan and Harry were given the privilege to step through the royal gates, but they were stripped of any opportunity to commercialize that privilege. They could not return to America and brag about the mended closeness, because there was no evidence. If they spoke about it on their own, without authentic images, they would only look like desperate people clinging to the past. This was a chess game where King Charles showed incredibly masterful skill. He fulfilled the wish of an ailing grandfather, completely stripped away the rejected victim status of Harry, and at the same time suffocated the only royal oxygen supply keeping the Sussex brand empire alive. Meghan Markle might be a master at manipulating camera lenses in California, but against a hundreds of years old institution like the British royal family, she was outplayed, completely defeated strategically. They walked into Highgrove with the ambition to re-establish their position, but ultimately had to walk out empty-handed in terms of PR imagery. The tolerance of the king turned out to be a perfect glass cage, where the Sussexes could see the light, but could never touch the crown one more time. Let us be a little realistic, ladies and gentlemen. When you have just been stripped of your only media weapon, when you realize the risky secret trip to Highgrove Estate did not bring you any million-dollar photos for leverage, how would you react? If you were Harry and Meghan, you would fall into a state of extreme panic. And that panic was exposed so clearly and pathetically just exactly 3 days after that secret meeting that brought absolutely no PR results. Harry, in a desperate attempt to regain control of the media narrative and maintain his presence, rushed onto a podcast program. He thought he could easily steer public opinion like the early days when he first set foot in America. But instead of salvaging his image, this hasty interview turned into the worst PR disaster, unintentionally stripping bare all the emptiness, hypocrisy, and deadlock of the so-called Sussex brand. On that podcast broadcast, when the host asked an extremely basic question, "What are you doing right now?" Harry gave a smile that he probably considered the most humble and relatable, then loudly declared his current profession as a full-time father. Stop for a second to ponder the bitter irony of that phrase. In America, a country that always honors the hard work of the middle class. The title full-time father or full-time mother is an invisible medal of honor for parents who truly have to struggle with everyday life. Those are the fathers and mothers who have to wake up at 2 in the morning to change diapers, cook every meal with their own hands, get headaches, struggling with utility bills at the end of every month, and feel exhausted after driving their children to school during rush hour. However, the full-time father version of this exiled prince carries a completely distorted definition, if not a mild insult to ordinary parents who are making an effort every day. We are talking about a man living in a $14 million super mansion in Montecito, which has up to 16 bathrooms, located in one of the most extravagant neighborhoods of billionaires and Hollywood superstars. A man who every time he travels back and forth between states uses a private jet worth tens of millions of dollars, surrounded by a massive team of professional nannies, butlers, star-rated private chefs, and a dense private security force no less than heads of state. The fact that Harry put on the simple full-time father shirt is actually just a clumsy verbal cover, a desperate attempt to cover up a bitter truth that the entire Hollywood elite has clearly seen: he is unemployed. He has absolutely no clear career direction, no real job, or any professional skill other than occasionally appearing in front of the camera, bringing out his royal title to attract attention. And the most ironic, most ridiculous thing in this whole play on the podcast broadcast is the desperate clinging to the titles they once swore to leave behind. Remember their eloquent statements 6 years ago. They shook the world when they announced leaving the British royal family, fleeing from a toxic and oppressive institution to seek freedom, seek financial independence, and a desire to live like ordinary citizens in North America. However, on that very podcast program, when the script required him to introduce himself, Harry did not hesitate for a second, immediately claiming himself as the Prince of England, as the Duke of Sussex. Let us ask a sharp, logical question here. If the royal family was truly a terrible nightmare, a place so dangerous and cruel that you had to flee with your wife and children in the night, why do you continue to milk the titles granted by that very system to make a living? The harsh truth is, if you strip away the two words, prince and duke, Harry is just a middle-aged man with no high academic degree, no business experience, and no special talent capable of attracting the highly pragmatic American public. He constantly attacks the royal family, but is completely unable to survive without that royal label. The pathetic nature of this rushed interview does not just stop at careless statements, it is also a red alarm bell for the irreversible decline of the Sussex brand. Numbers and contracts do not lie. The massive $100 million deal with the streaming giant Netflix is shaking violently and faces the risk of being cut off at any time when the contract expires. Spotify fired them outright after an executive publicly called them lazy grifters. The Hollywood elite, those who used to line up hoping to get a nod from Meghan, are now gradually turning their backs and distancing themselves from them like a media risk that must be avoided. Look at the recent efforts of Meghan Markle to stand on her own 2 feet to clearly see this deadlock and pathetic state. Her startup project with the strawberry jam brand, American Riviera Orchard, quickly became a laughingstock on social media platforms, sinking in the cold indifference of the public. Independent film projects, podcast programs touting female empowerment have all successively failed miserably or been shelved in the archives before they could even launch. When the Sussexes try to do anything unrelated to leaking secrets, attacking or clinging to Buckingham Palace, absolutely no one cares. Their intrinsic value on the free market is almost zero. But, on the contrary, if just a fragile rumor leaks out that Meghan and Harry secretly slipped through the security fence to meet King Charles, immediately, their names proudly flash back on the front pages of a series of large and small newspapers globally. This contrast proves the most cruel truth in the entertainment industry. The Sussex brand is a parasitic entity. It cannot survive on its own. cannot generate commercial value on its own without the connection, whether negative or positive, with the British royal family. King Charles, with the steel wall of silence and the refusal to provide photos at Highgrove, has fully exposed that fatal weakness. When the royal oxygen supply is cut off, when the million-dollar photos are never taken, what is left in Montecito are just empty promises, a forced title of full-time father, and an uncertain future that is gradually depleting in both talent and finances. The king might have, out of a weak spark of fatherly love and the desire of a grandfather battling illness, slightly opened an extremely narrow door at Highgrove. However, do not let that tiny concession fool you. Right inside the cold stone walls of the palace, there is a man who single-handedly slammed shut all the rekindled hopes of Harry with locks made of cold steel. That person is none other than the Prince of Wales, Prince William. If Charles represents an old generation, sometimes torn between family responsibility and national duty, then William embodies a ruthless, decisive, and uncompromising future of the institution. The distance of concession from William for his younger brother at this time is not one step, not half a step, but exactly not a single millimeter. A perfectly round zero. Look at the calculated and cold absence of William during the days the Sussexes secretly slipped into Britain. That was absolutely not a random scheduling coincidence, and even less an avoidance out of apprehension. In politics and the royal sphere, silence and absence are sometimes the language that emits the most deafening sound. When the 20-car decoy convoy was rushing to distract the press to bring Meghan and Harry in to see the king, where was William? He was miles away, both geographically and psychologically. There was not a single meeting arranged, even just 5 minutes of socializing. There was not a single representative sent to convey greetings. There was no press release, no comment, and absolutely not a shred of interest revealed. William executed the most perfect grey rock campaign, a classic psychological method used to deal with toxic individuals by cutting off all emotional and attention supplies. To William right now, Harry and Meghan simply do not exist. To understand the cold outrage and the uncrossable red line that William has drawn, we must dive deep into the psychology of this future king. Put yourself in his position. For the past 6 years, William has had to stand and watch his own flesh and blood brother sell out the family in exchange for lucrative contracts in America. He has had to grit his teeth and endure when his beloved wife, Princess Catherine, was used as a shield, ruthlessly smeared on global television and in the pages of hateful memoirs. He witnessed the final days of his grandparents, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, being enveloped by the dark shadow of tension and unreasonable demands from Montecito. To William, this betrayal is not just ordinary sibling friction, it is a crime against the institution, against the thousands of years of legacy that he has sworn to defend with his life. Because of that, in the eyes of William, the decision to open the doors of Highgrove by King Charles, even though backed by strict security measures and allowing no photos to leak, is still a dangerous softening of the heart. William considers that secret meeting not a mending effort, but an enabling reward for the worst behaviors. The logical thinking of Americans is always very clear. You cannot reward someone who tried to set fire to your house just because he suddenly comes back and says he wants to visit the children. William believes that any concession, no matter how small, will send the wrong message to the Sussexes that they can continue this game of emotional blackmail. This rift exposes two completely different missions, two roles fiercely clashing within the interior of the palace. King Charles, in his twilight years and facing severe health challenges, acts primarily through the lens of a father trying to gather the last pieces of family affection. He wants to see his grandchildren. He does not want to pass away carrying a flesh and blood grudge. But William is different. William does not look at this story from the perspective of an older brother anymore. He is looking at it in his capacity as the future king of the United Kingdom, as a CEO preparing to take over a multinational corporation with the oldest history in the world. The mission of William is to ensure the survival and integrity of the institution for many decades to come, especially as power transition processes and important legislative changes are gradually being shaped for the period from now until July 2026. Under the future reign of William, all boundaries will be established in titanium. The concept of half-in, half-out, which Harry and Meghan once deluded themselves into thinking they could maintain to enjoy royal privileges while making commercial money, has been mercilessly smashed by William. He has drawn a bloody red line: either you dedicate 100% to the crown, or you are completely eliminated. There is no gray area. There are no secret outings with ambiguous diplomatic nature. When the crown is officially placed on the head of William, the palace doors that are already tightly closed will be permanently sealed with concrete for the Sussexes. The anger of William is not the impulsive rage of a jealous person, but the high vigilance of a leader protecting his kingdom from ticking time bombs. He perfectly understands that the current silence is only the calm before the storm. Buckingham Palace may have temporarily stripped Meghan of her weapons that day by banning cameras, but William knows well the nature of those who live on attention. A beast cornered, stripped of its aura, will become more reckless and dangerous than ever. He chose to stay out of it, not yielding, not compromising, because he is preparing for a long war. William has reason to be outraged and vigilant, because even if no photos were leaked today, who dares to guarantee that tomorrow Meghan Markle will not drop a new media bomb? But the whole story about the costly security operation, or the terrifying silence of King Charles and the extreme outrage of Prince William, is only the tip of a giant iceberg. There is still a darker secret, a real-time bomb ticking away right under the feet of the royal institution, a detail capable of blowing away the most fragile healing efforts. Remember the decoy convoy of 20 cars lurking in the dark. Their purpose was not simply to sneak Meghan, Harry and the two children into Highgrove estate smoothly. According to leaked sources smoldering in the media intelligence circles and the most well-informed people on both sides of the Atlantic, there was a second destination secretly inserted into the schedule of the Sussexes. A location not under the control of Buckingham Palace, but carrying the most terrible power to manipulate public emotion: the Althorp estate, the final resting place of Princess Diana. This detail is not simply a visit to the grave by exiled children and grandchildren. In the cruel world of the American entertainment industry, where every tear can be priced and every family tragedy is lucrative material for documentary scripts, the trip to Althorp carries a vital commercial meaning for Harry and his wife. Heading into next year, the whole world will turn its attention to the 30th anniversary of the death of Princess Diana. 3 decades have passed since the fateful tunnel in Paris, but the legacy, image, and public sympathy for the English rose have never cooled down. The bosses at Netflix understand this well, and Meghan Markle, a person who always craves to grasp media hotspots, understands it even better than anyone. As the $100 million contract is gradually coming to an end in a deadlock of ideas, exclusive footage capturing Harry, Meghan and their 2 children, Archie and Lilibet, standing quietly in front of the lonely tomb on the island in the middle of the lake at Althorp would be a priceless golden ticket. That is media material with terrible destructive power, sensational enough, capable of moving millions of American hearts, and most importantly, enough to ensure the Sussexes continue to renew their life and death contracts. If viewed from this angle, the entire recent secret reunion was absolutely not a tearful return or a sincere effort to heal family wounds like what the tabloids are trying to weave. On the contrary, Buckingham Palace was very awake. King Charles, backed by the coldest strategic minds of the royal family and the strict supervision from William, turned this audience into a test, a final life and death test for the loyalty and moral limits of the Sussexes. A cruel but absolutely necessary test. The British royal family proactively established a zone of absolute information vacuum around Highgrove. By not releasing any images, not issuing any statements, they threw the ball of responsibility into the court of Montecito. The rules of this test are extremely simple, expressed in sharp everyday language that cannot be mistaken. We gave you the opportunity to step through the door, let you meet. And now, we will silently wait to see what you do next. If Harry and Meghan truly carry within them the desire to heal family affection, they will take the memories of that meeting, of the smile or the embrace of King Charles, and hide them deep in their hearts, keeping it secret behind the walls of the million-dollar mansion in California. That is how a real family protects each other. But if the nature of this cross-ocean journey is simply a material hunting trip and nothing more, their true face will soon be exposed. This test was designed to lure the prey out. In the next few weeks or months, Buckingham Palace will patiently observe every move from the American media. If suddenly, on the cover of People magazine, or in an exclusive news segment of CBS, or through the mouths of hosts close to Meghan, accidental leaks start to appear. If the public starts hearing anonymous stories, telling about how King Charles was moved to tears when holding Lilibet, or how Harry had a private healing conversation with his father, or, more terribly, leaked images from the secret trip to the grave of Princess Diana used to promote a new film project, then the trap snaps shut. When any tiny detail, any crumb of emotion of the king is dragged into the light to serve the PR machine of the Sussexes, the test will immediately end with a score of 0. At that time, the sentence for them will no longer need any debate. It will provide King Charles, and especially Prince William, with the final ironclad evidence to make a decision that history cannot judge them for. The royal doors, which are already rusty and only open a narrow slit, will be slammed shut. The locks will be permanently locked tight, stripping away all titles, all privileges, and every last chance for the Sussexes to step back into this system. They will be completely pushed to the margins, left to survive or perish on their own in a cruel entertainment world where those who have lost their exploitative value will be forgotten faster than the blink of an eye. The test has begun, and the royal countdown clock is ticking. It is only a matter of time before we see who the real winner in this chess game is. Ladies and gentlemen, the secret meeting at Highgrove Estate is absolutely not a glorious victory or a great turning point for Harry and Meghan, the way the American media has been loudly claiming these past few days. Instead, it is the clearest, most naked proof showing their pathetic dependence on the very thing they once loudly rejected before the whole world: royal titles and aura. Harry can sit on a podcast broadcast, give a forced smile, and proudly tout himself as a full-time father enjoying a peaceful life in California. But deep down in his soul, he and his team understand better than anyone else that the world out there only really pays attention to him when he stands under the giant shadow of Buckingham Palace. As for King Charles, the old monarch played a risky but extremely mischievous move. By the decision to open the door for his grandchildren to enter but slam shut all filming opportunities, he completely stripped his daughter-in-law of her only money-making tool while cleanly erasing the cold-blooded grandfather label that the Sussexes had tried hard to weave. However, this war still cannot end here. With an ambitious woman who understands the manipulative power of the media too well like Meghan Markle, will she resign herself to sit still and watch the Sussex brand slowly die in the alienation of Hollywood? Or is the current deadly silence just a terrifying calm before a more horrifying storm about to land next year, a time when Netflix will certainly aggressively demand sensational footage, deep palace secrets to salvage the multi-million-dollar contract that is on the verge of collapsing? Time will answer all these tough questions. And one thing is certain: right at this moment, in July 2026, Prince William is still standing there, at the center of power, carefully observing every move of his younger brother with the extreme coldness of a future king. Thank you all for taking the time to watch the entire analysis video today. What do you think about the desperate clinging to titles by Harry and the bleak future of the Sussexes? Please leave your opinions and sharp perspectives right below in the comments section. Do not forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss any shocking hidden corners about the British royal family in our next videos. Goodbye and see you again.